E a foto do Marcos é de 15 anos atrás. Certo.
Só um minuto, estou aguardando só confirmar aqui que iniciou. Então, boa sorte aí, meninas. Assim que aparecer a tela, está no ar.
Beleza. Olá, olá, boa tarde. Já começamos?
Good afternoon. We already started. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm from France. It's 6 o'clock here. I know that it's 1 o'clock there in Brazil. It is a great pleasure to be the mediator in this session at Imagine, because it talks about the female presence not only in soundtracks but also in other aspects. We have a director, Rosane Wartman, who is here, who I think is someone who is very important. It's like in the composition, the male presence really dominates, and it's a great pleasure to have her here. I already have talked on the female presence. It wasn't imagined. It was imagined 3 years ago, and what was lacking was exactly what Amanda Lopez and Luisa Alvin can bring, which are data for us to be able to see how we are, at where we are now, how it used to be before. Amanda showed the beginning of the 20th century. Alice is going to talk about that, and Luisa is going to share the different the research she does. It will be very interesting to tell the story from where we're coming from, where we're going to, in order to be able to think and to know about what we can do now, what we will be doing now. Okay, my name is Mariona Lemonnier. I'm a composer and I work for Global and for journalism for 16 years. I was the first woman hired as a musical producer at the Global TV. We had Aragon, who already did it before, but she was never really hired. And I personally, I always felt very alone at Globe. I would love to have more colleagues. And in 2017, I did the whole musical direction of Global News, all the jingles, everything is mine. That's, I thought, it's not so much worth showing my work. I would like to introduce my partners here today. So that's it. Let's start in an alphabetical order. I don't know. Amanda Lopez, please, I would love you to introduce yourself and for you to tell us about the platform Mulheres Audiovisual, which seems very, very nice. I would like to thank the invitation. It's very good to be able to meet you. And certainly me and my family, we all love your work. We, at the beginning, we just used to watch Global. So that's how I became a fan. So thank you very much. My first contact with art was composing music, but I studied cinema because I was frightened from this to just work with music. I thought it was fun. Thank you very much. Thank you for talking about my work that you believe is important, which is the platform. The platform was my thesis in my cinema course, and I would like I would like to start sharing the images instead of just showing my face, and then I will talk about Alice Guy, which was the most interesting thing that happened in my life, which already was part of my master's thesis.
Vamos lá. Perdão aqui que a gente fica abrindo um monte de páginas. Então, essa daqui
So here,
é a minha plataforma.
this is my platform. Our.
Seria minha se tivesse
It
guardado só.
would be mine if it was in my closet. So I launched it in December 2016, and it was the result of my thesis in the university, and the cinema university, with a scholarship. And the idea would be to be able to create a catalog, to create a library with all the work from women, where it would be easier for people to find, oh, are there women out there? So I'm going to show 2 videos, and I think that we would be able to understand much better about the platform.
E foi uma trilha sonora original.
And it was an original soundtrack.
Desculpa, gente, eu tenho muito orgulho disso e de mostrar
I'm very proud.
É a nossa vez de falar. Gratidão por ouvir.
Pois é,
Thank
Amanda.
you very much, Amanda. I was talking about numbers.
A gente agora...
Thank you for bringing these numbers, because that's the best way to start things. Let's put first the numbers.
Eu vou pedir
Perfect.
só mais uma licença, porque aí eu faço uma...
Just one thing, because then I do just one presentation. Then we have everybody. It's in my master's. You can find Alice Guy, which is considered the first woman in cinema, and she was the secretary of Gaumont. And here I'm not going to tell her story. You can have my thesis, there's my article,
de mestrado que você consegue acessar lá.
and you can have access to it. And we're just only going to make
Uma biblioteca.
talk a bit of a publicity, because I want people to have a look. There's a lot of information. You can write articles with what I put here.
Filmes que eu encontrei.
77 of the films that I found and I introduced in the platform. She directed more than 1,250.
Vocês vão ter acesso a
Here
uma
you
linha
have access to a timeline,
a parte de baixo, a linha do tempo.
and
do
here
cinema que é contado na
it
grande
is the timeline of the history of cinema that is told in books, and here her story,
minha própria, né?
and even mine.
Aqui abaixo Acho vai ter
Here
lista de
underneath, a
artigos.
list of films
Separei
and
uns filmes.
articles,
O
and here's
cinema
some films.
só começou depois de
People
40.
say that only after the 40s we had sound in films, and here I want to show you some curiosities,
De 100 filmes sonoros.
because here we have, she did many films with sound much before cinema actually had sound.
Desenvolvia. Vou parar de-
Gaumont, I'm gonna stop talking.
Bonjour, dites-moi, Rosine, ma belle voisine, d'où venez donc tout ce bruit chez vous cette nuit? Vous battiez-vous, ma charmante, étiez-vous
Então,
souffrante?
aqui, ó, 1906, tá?
That's 1906.
Honestamente, quando eu olho, eu falo, isso tá perfeito.
This is perfect.
Mas é que, ainda para a época, né?
But for the time,
Equipamentos, a
the
sincronização,
equipment, the sync,
deixava muito mais caro do que
everything became much more expensive than it used to be.
77 filmes.
In this list of 77 films, there are 10 or 11.
Super interessados e pesquisadores quanto
Those that are interested, this is an image of Alice Guy when she was very
com uma
young,
câmera e
playing with a
pousando
camera and posing
para os
for the
Lumière.
Lumiere brothers.
É engraçado, né?
It's funny.
Tem som aí, Amanda?
Tem, é
Is
que
there
é
sound?
legal, né? Por isso que eu só estava mostrando a carinha dela,
Ok.
quem nunca
It's
conheceu.
just to show her face.
Então, esse mil, uma coisa que é um pouquinho mais longo, né? Não vai ter tempo de assistir inteiro, mas eu deixo todo mundo aí que gosta de som, quadrado de som, já em 1920, fazendo uma coisa maravilhosa. Vou parar de compartilhar a tela, senão ficar aqui para sempre. Eu queria deixar só todo mundo.
I just would like to sort of stimulate your curiosity. There's a lot of things that still need a lot of research.
Salvou minha vida, eu diria.
Research saved my life, and I hope that you also may have fun.
Não sou pesquisadora da área de cinema.
I'm not a music researcher,
Enquanto diretor, enquanto história.
so I researched Alice Guy as a historian, and my idea never was to research music, but I thought this woman,
Quem é a pesquisadora mãe, eu diria, no mundo, fala sobre ela, é a Alison McMahon.
Alison McMahon, is American. She was the consultor on the two documentaries about her, and about the last one that was launched with Robert Redford. Okay, I forgot. Sorry.
Da dela.
We're talking about a film about her life with Jodie Foster. Be Natural. It is from 2020. I watched it on a pirate copy, and it's very moving. I really tried to. I discovered things that I hadn't seen before. It was amazing. So I hope that I can really stimulate people to watch it. You can read my masters. And thank you, Musimagem, for having invited me. And that's it. Thank you very much. Good that you're here. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you very much for this very necessary work. It is very important what you just mentioned for us to become more visible, even for myself. Okay, mention other composers, and sometimes nor even I know. I don't have this feedback, and we also worked in a series, Mulheres Fantásticas for Global Reporters. We were cartoons for children, telling stories of wonderful women, Malala, Frida Kahlo. So extracts of very short And it was the best thing I was able to do for women since I got into global. Let's continue our round table. Luisa, please. Luisa Alvim, you are a researcher. It is wonderful. It's wonderful to be able to have your light, your ideas. I would like you to tell us about your career and the result of your research. Good evening from depending on where you are. I would like to thank them all. It was Manda who called me. I met in the academy. We participated in different congresses, and that's how I found out about her work. But I have known about the Musimagem Festival, and I former Cláudio Zay received the homage by Remo Zay, and Cláudio Zay is also a composer. She's also my friend, and very good. So in this métier, which is extremely a male environment, I always say there are two male métiers, also the directors, the film directors, the filmmakers, and the composers. If you go, for example, into a course of musical composition, you will only see men in the classroom. It has been changing, but still they are very dominant in cinema. I think that we are being able to decrease this inequality. I don't have the statistical data, but if we think about composers, who is there in the market and the films, the most evident films, of course, there are very famous names, but still it's a very male environment. I'm a researcher, I don't compose, I analyze films and film tracks, the sound of the films. I research cinema with a specialty in sound and soundtrack. And there's something that is very curious because it's the opposite situation. We have many women, and I think and I believe that because it is something that is not very much respected, and mainly the academical research of sound and cinema, the women found a niche, and it's very interesting to just not have to make any effort. Let me just get female authors. I have authors, and I think there are many main important female authors. So this is a niche that has been occupied by women. One of the main authors in general worldwide is Gladia Gorman, and she's American, and she has a book called Unheard Melodies, which is a book that everybody uses. It is difficult to have a research field in which women, you can think about a woman very quickly. It's difficult without having to stop, without making an effort. And in the Brazilian universities, this also happened in the same way. We have some great names. It is important to recall that those studies started at the end of the 70s. It is quite recent. The most academic study, it doesn't mean that they didn't exist before. But for example, more academic studies that they started in the 70s with Claudia Borgman, Michel Chion, a very known name, Henrique Altman. And in the Brazilian Academy, we have some names that will emerge at the end of the 90s. Professor Ney Carrasco from Unicamp, but many students that have been supervised by Ney or people that went to Unicamp, for example, Susana Reg Miranda, who is at USAR. I mean, people that came from this practice, but that today are professors, Virginia Flores, for example, and Unila, Kira Pereira, at Unila, Debra Boschi. There are people that have a lot of experience and practice, but that ended up teaching. I haven't worked in the métier, but I have been teaching courses of music and cinema, not only in BA. Um, I don't have, I'm not hired as such. I don't have a contract. I'm just, I made like a second professor at the university in the cinema course. So the academic courses, they are still within another course that we call in Brazil communication, which has usually it is a journalism course. And now we have a course at UFI, Federal Fluminense University. I taught at UFI, at the Federal Fluminense, and the postgrad courses of music, because I did a postdoctorate at the Federal University, and always taught those courses, all classes that had to do with my subject. My PhD was the study of music at Robert Bresson's films. Let's do a bit of merchandising of the book, if you can put the image. It was launched in 2017. After the thesis, I did a bit of a revision. I always have been I studied a lot music of the modern cinema, like continued with Nouvelle Vague, and it's always this male club, of filmmakers and the women, also in the 60s, 70s. I mean, in France, there was Vardar, Agnes Vardar. I mean, if we research, we will find many people making cinema, but in those little films, and when I started studying cinema novo in Brazil, it was even worse. And now I have a project that I didn't manage to develop because the project didn't get the financing, and I don't know how I'm going to continue. But I am a second professor, and I teach things that have nothing to do with music. But the idea is to study music in contemporary cinema, but to study the music that exists. I don't know all the female composers, but of course we can see a film and we see that there are more women now. There are more female filmmakers. Oh, let's invite women that are filmmakers, female filmmakers. No, because we need more women. No, 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 no. We have important female directors, and we're managing to occupy more space in this area. I think music still has to progress in that respect. We have Claudio Zai, we have this composer from Iceland who won the Oscar. The name, it is very difficult. Pinar Topra. Yeah, the one who composed the music for Captain Marvel. Hildur. So we have these names, they're emerging, but we need more people. And my research not necessarily will involve those composers that are alive, because I'm researching soundtracks that already exist, but the majority is from male composers. And that has to do with my research. Okay, thank you very much. After we finish, I would like to talk about the new project.
Porque acho que as coisas mudaram mesmo. Rosane, então você é a Pérola.
Rosane.
Liga aí o seu áudio para se
Okay, start your audio and introduce yourself. So you have this incredible career, being a director for Rede Globo. I do not know many people in the entertainment field, but this is the first time I see a soap opera director. I'm a writer. I write the script for novella, but I was once a director there, but not for novella. Actually, at Globo, I'm going to be writing the fifth soap opera. I wrote four. I did direct some series and humor program. And on cable TV, I was a director for a few programs, and I was actually a director for some feature films. There's this Pluft, which is an adaptation from Maria Clara Machado's uh, play. And I did series, and I usually say that I tell stories because it's difficult to define what we do, being a director, a script writer. Um, and actually, this comes from the moment when I graduated from the Federal University. That was during the Collor administration. We didn't know what we were going to do in movie making. So I'm from this generation who worked wherever we could in order to be able to tell stories. Halfway through, I got back to the Federal University for my doctorate thesis. I like to teach. When we teach, we learn a lot. And then just introducing myself. In each place, we introduce ourselves slightly differently. When I was informed about the theme of this panel, we are talking about this theme before, women in audiovisual and music. We also said that we do not fit in a single panel. We're actually all over the place in audiovisual, music, and the track records, tracks and audiovisual. I did participate in some specific panels at Rio Content and others uh, talking about women in audiovisual. The reason for these panels is they are in video Amanda showed, the platform and numbers. Though I think we do not fit into these panels, and we shouldn't. Should actually be looking at all possibilities, not only for women, again, as was shown in Amanda's video, but I think those panels.
Estão aí, né? E aí, pensando no que trazer, assim, no que oferecer e conversar nessa mesa, eu acabei indo para a ideia do festival, né? Musimagem, música em imagem, e pensei em celebrar o quanto a música é importante quando a gente está contando uma história, quando a gente está construindo um universo. E aí o que eu trouxe para compartilhar são pequenos trechos, talvez eu compartilhe um pouquinho agora, e aí se der tempo, porque eu também não quero tomar, enfim, o tempo da mesa com isso, mas eu trouxe para compartilhar 2 trechos do meu filme mais recente, que é o Pluft, o Fantasminha. E é um filme, eu defino o Pluft assim, é sobre como a gente tem medo do que é diferente e como o afeto ajuda a superar esse medo. E essa é a história do Pluft, né? Um fantasminha que morre de medo de gente. Aliás, vem antes de Gasparzinho, né? A peça é de 55, foi inclusive para os Estados Unidos, Gasparzinho é de 65, 10 anos depois, e foi também para, enfim, 40 países. E ao longo, né, dessas décadas, é uma história que universal, e eu acho que ela é viva, né, interessante até hoje, justamente por essa mensagem do fantasminha que tem medo de gente e aprende, né, e o afeto dele pela Maribel, que é a primeira pessoa que ele conhece, faz ele superar esse medo e ajudar a Maribel, enfim, a enfrentar o grande pirata perna de pau. Então, eu posso, Marion, compartilhar? Você...
Pode. Não, eu ia falar isso quando a Luísa perguntou, vocês vão compartilhando, gente, podem falar, eu estou super afim de saber o que vocês querem mostrar, pode fazer merchandising, pode fazer tudo.
Então, não, na verdade, conversando com o Tim Rescala, que foi quem me convidou, eu dei essa ideia, falei, vamos passar um trecho, ele fez, inclusive, a trilha de uma forma, assim, incrível do filme, e então eu queria passar agora, se possível, o vídeo 1. Antônio. Tá com som?
Mas, gente, é uma gracinha, mamãe. Nem sempre, meu filho, nem sempre. Gente, é engraçado.
Como é que você se chama?
Pluft, e você?
Eu sou Maribel.
Você é gente, não é?
Sou. E você?
Eu sou fantasma.
Assim. Fantasma mesmo?
É, fantasma mesmo.
Engraçado. De você eu não tenho medo.
Nem eu de você. Engraçado.
Você é friozinho.
Acho que, Antônio, vamos passar o segundo agora, por favor.
So can we show the second film now? Antonio, please.
Então esse aqui a gente filmou debaixo d'água. Agora
Good
o
images, very good image. Yeah, this one was like as if he was underwater. Now let's see this second one. In theory, I think there's music to this one.
Mas, gente, é uma gracinha, mamãe. Nem sempre, meu filho, nem sempre. Gente, é engraçado.
Como é que você se chama?
Pluft, e você?
Eu sou Maribel.
Você é gente, não é?
Sou. E você?
Eu sou fantasma.
Assim. Fantasma mesmo?
É, fantasma mesmo.
Engraçado. De você eu não tenho medo.
Nem eu de você. Engraçado.
Você é friozinho.
Uou! Ai! Não! Pluft! Com licença.
Pode parar, pode parar.
You can stop now. Actually, I wanted to show with music and without music one passage of joy and happiness when they make friends. At this point in time, Pluft was already spying on Maribel, and it tries to expel her from home. She comes back. She's initially frightened when she sees him. He is frightened when he sees her, but then she falls. She faints, and then she comes back, and they see each other. So there's this mystery and interaction, and you see that for children's films, for families, but with a children's outlook. So music sort of enhances the moments when she is frightened, and then particularly for children's films or for family, music pervades the entire film. And this was a point with Tim. Are we going to have a moment to breathe, like a moment of silence? Also, we used to talk about the measure in which the music would narrate the scene, or when it was a pleonasm, meaning unnecessary. And sometimes music has to provide a different atmosphere than the scene. So when they are playing, like when they are pointing at each other and smiling, that has to be a simple music, because there's a friendship starting. There could be a more powerful music at that moment, but I would also like to say that music was recorded with the Idiopolis Orchestra. The entire film is pervaded with special effect. I apologize. Global News tracks we did record with the Heliopolis Orchestra. Yes, good. They're incredible people. Okay, the idea here was to make a film that was involved involving 100% professionals and technology, Brazilian professional, Brazilian technology. It's 3D as well. This is going to be out in the movies, competing with other films that cost a lot more coming from abroad with thousands of special effects. So we looked for another pathway, for another avenue for this magic. Not in this passage, but there are ingredients, there are lots of details from our huge Brazilian repertoire. So that would add that Brazil nature to the film, but also in all other aspects of what we can do in terms of movie making, entertainment. So it is also relevant to be able to tell a story like that with quality. Yes, Brazilian cinema is that. I mean, looking at music for that, it's a huge bet, because Brazilian music. I usually tell Brazilians, you do not realize how high level your music is. I am very honored to be professionally recognized by musicians in Brazil. I'm French born, and I am really proud because there's a whole lot of talented people, very good people. There's a sophisticated tradition to music, popular music. You also have classical music authors, composers who are very high level. So, so I don't see any sense rivaling with U.S. Mainstream because you do not have that weapon, those weapons. You talked about Clemon from Heliopolis Orchestra. He is the sound engineer. He's got great level. And Heliopolis is a social project orchestra, humanistic. And this orchestra has now gotten to a very good level. It has professionalized many musicians, and thanks to the local industry, they are now capable of living off that. So it's really nice, great experience. Congratulations. Now, speaking of sound engineers, I see that Dani Pastori left this message to Marcos Souza. Daniela said those panels are very important, but it's still very little for our current representativeness in the market. Hello, Dani. Dani is a sound engineer. There's Florencia as well. They are extremely good ladies uh, in music and in direction. There are few women, but also for sound engineers, that's a difficult market for women in Brazil. There are very few women, and Dani and Florence are part of those people who are really busy making for a better balance in this segment, in this professional segment. And she said it was really a pity to have only this panel on women. As you said, Josiane, we are here to provide a panorama of women's footprint. But as I said to Dani, I did participate in other presentations. I made speeches on music for journalism, for documentaries, We had Monique Aragão, who made many other presentations. Vivian, yes, I wanted to talk about her. She was going to be participating with us here, and she's got a team problem at DreamWorks, where she works in Los Angeles, and she couldn't be with us, unfortunately. Uh, Vivian's joining Musimagem was very important for me because after she joined, I was no longer the only woman. I made a friend that it was very important to have her here with us. And she always was. She, for us, she would bring this outlook on Hollywood because she's always worked in this market. She worked with Hans Zimmer and these big names there, and now she is working with DreamWorks. And she started to speak about Piratro and Sigur, who talked about Rachel Portman, who's one of the most talented uh, persons there. And she was trying to put together this festival of composers in Los Angeles in order to invite an orchestra, like what we do with Luz Imagem. The orchestra is going to be playing the compositions made by Musimagen's composers. She wanted to do something similar with music from women composers. Uh, it's always been possible, but nowadays, particularly, it's always been possible, but we just didn't see. But nowadays, we can actually make a very nice concert. So she started to ask me to do the same thing in France, but here, the French footprint is very small in this segment. I do not have a single, I have a single female co-worker who's making mainstream films in France. She used to be a sound engineer, and she started to play a little with music, and from one film to another, she started to be called by the teams because she is very good, and she was the only one who had a little more visibility in France. I did join some groups to try and get to know more women, and there are women in the sound realm. Uh, you you have who really look and are interested. You who work with that know that sound is what we see, and what we see is what we hear. So it is a bit crazy, but uh, do get to study because this is an area in need. I only feel as an artist because of social coda. So let's use this opportunity to say why there's few people making art in Brazil. It's not a recent thing. It's not a country that actually makes it easier for people to dream about being artistic. I am a teacher in public schools. I only started thinking about art when I was 30 years old. So it's difficult to dream about art when we think that artists in Brazil are considered to be tramps and lazy people, and we have this idea like we are going to go for art. We're gonna starve to death, and then have to ask for family support. But that's uh, all about women, and now we're looking at this fourth wave. There are many programs that encourage technology, and actually, in many areas, women are supporting other women now. But it's a challenge. I'd say that we have to do exactly this. We have to prioritize women's stories so that there will be more women for those women. That's exactly what I was going to ask you. Those were the questions I was going to ask you. You have a producer company for the synthesis films, right? In your production now, how do you usually work? Do you have a mixed team, or do you do like those women's groups do? Within photosynthesis, which is the name of the company, it was started in a art directions class where a lesson had to be made. And I was wondering, I love to tell stories, so I was thinking about it, and then I created this brand, let's put it this way. So it would be two segments. And when I'm working with women only, those are projects in connection with audiovisual women. You can see that I was born woman, trans, non-binary. It's a crazy thing, but my preference is to work in female teams. obviously I have lots of gay friends and I feel at ease with them. It's not that I don't feel with all them with all men, but that would be therapeutic kind of talk. But I prefer to work more with women. So those are projects that are connected to the female presence or female footprint. And so I prefer that my teams are composed of women, so they are my brands, and it's a matter of putting a team together. Some people asked for black only teams, so I have to go for that. And I am studying and looking at doing it. And photosynthesis is this film, this place where I launched all of my films and I put all of my stuff. If you look at the first clip I produced and directed, it's called Determinação, Determination, and that's what it is. Images, very, very strong song by my preferred band at the time, and some narrative. So I did meet wonderful women here in Brazil, and you certainly know them. Malina Brule, who's she's involved with productions for Globo, Carolina Barranco, and many others. I'm trying to remember. I apologize. Danny has also sent two wonderful names of composers. Marina Freitas, who works with Marcelo da Vila, she's a good pianist, and Flavia Tinger. She's a great composer. She's the daughter to David Tinger, who's our partner here at Musimagem. I don't know if Flavia is a partner, but she's got to be. But still, I've got a question to Luisa. I'd like to learn a little more about your new project in terms of doing research into more up-to-date music for movies. So, what would be your outlook on that?
Utilizadas, ou reutilizada completamente, ou reformatada e utilizada, né? E tem uma
the continuation of
assim,
films that already exist and then have a certain scope. So I haven't worked with composers who do original music, but I have seen a lot of contemporary films.
Aumento de presença de mulheres. No meu trabalho,
we can see my first work, my book.
Acho que até a Amanda também tinha pedido para falar um pouquinho dele. Aí foi num diretor específico francês, né, Roberto Resson. E aí não tinha esse recorte de um tipo de música, né? Eu estudei toda a música no ele não trabalhou com nenhuma compositora e ele usou muita música pré-existente.
Roberto studied the whole music in his cinema. He composed pre-existing songs, and I started to study some of the composers.
E a característica do Robert Bresson
the feature, one of the main characteristics of Robert Bresson, apart from using old songs, was music very carefully. And it's very interesting to see what was in his set. It's a bit,
preocupação muito grande, aliás, foi uma preocupação muito grande de toda a teoria do cinema sobre música no cinema, essa coisa da redundância, assim, é quase um palavrão ali, né? Assim,
was his concept, the music to underline, to emphasize the scene and make it redundant. Adorno, he complains a lot about it, for example. So, just think of using
muito isso no cinema contemporâneo, mas é claro, num certo cinema contemporâneo.
Certain type of contemporary singers. I would like to emphasize that I'm not studying contemporary.
Assim, de autor, né? Não sei se a gente pode ainda falar essa palavra meio anos 60.
As a whole, I'm talking very much with the independent cinema. I mean, those films that go to cinema festivals, Cannes, Berlin, and Venice, and there is a great amount of female filmmakers that have a certain feature, not all of them. People are very careful when using music, and we can see that with Bresson. It's a starting point, and some of those directors, they actually use Bresson as a reference. So my study has a lot to do with mapping. How music is used, what type of music, but it has a lot to do with this independent cinema. And we have the Hollywood cinema that eventually can be more artistic, like Tarantino. He is Hollywood, but he has his own creativity. He's quite independent in his thinking. And I also felt that my the composers, my colleagues,
principalmente das grandes escolas de cinema, na França também, né, na
help
FEMIS, o
that
discurso
people that came
se
from
teu
the
filme é
cinema.
ruim,
So
precisa de muita música, né? Não é isso?
if your
E eu não acho, eu sou
film
mais
is bad, then you
assim,
need a lot of music. That's more or less
colocar
what
assim,
you're
de
saying,
ter
isn't
uma
it? And I don't
cumplicidade assim entre a música e a imagem. Eu acho que é um diálogo, é audiovisual, né? Então a
to create
realmente entra como tipo um personagem às vezes, enfim.
a dialogue. So it is the type of character. So there are many ways of discussing that, because it's something that is more suggestive. And so that's why I was a bit disappointed. Oh, the more music you put, the worse your film is. I mean, in the end, it is not good for us because we want to express ourselves more, and the director, so there's too much music, and that's what we feel that we need to put the music. Is that what you want to say? I only studied those that don't use pre-existing music, but I realized that there has been this trend in this festival to use less music, but there are directors that use a lot of Mali, for example, wants music all the time without no problem. So it really depends on the type of film, what sort of film. Some films, they have space for a lot of music, and it's good for the film. But there are films that they don't need much music. It will really depend on the style, on the film as a whole, and what will be discussed between the musician and the director. Let's hope for that.
Fazer uma reflexão para a Rosane agora. O Tim acabou de falar.
I want to ask Rosane. Tim Rescalo just asked here in the chat. Rosane,
ele falou isso.
The director that all composers want to work with. And he's the composers that all the directors want to work with.
Não, foi um grande encontro.
It was a big creative meeting in a way. It's a gathering. I really liked it when we started to think about how is it independent cinema, because me personally, I never...
Eu sempre assino dirigido por, até porque eu tenho uma grande parceira que é a Clélia Bessa, que é...
I have a great partner who is Clélia Bessa. So she produces, I direct. Marcos Pieri is producing, but everybody, Chin, for example, he can do the soundtrack, he composes the music, whatever. I can talk about every film. I think the director will direct the whole team, and together we can create our world.
Só acabando
fala, Rosane,
a questão do autoral, mas aí eu fico pensando...
Okay, when I hear this, okay, I never sign a B film, but when you see cinema as an art film, independent film, whatever, Truffaut has an article at Cahiers du Cinéma that was translated.
Foi visitar o set de contato.
That is, he went to visit the Spielberg's set, and he was amazed that even in a commercial film, the guild the fault always will be the filmmakers. And now I want to, because if the fault would be Spielberg, then it doesn't exist. Every cinema is a film in which you have, you expect the filmmaker to be an author. I would like you and all, as an author, I participated in a festival. Kino is you have a technical team, edit of cameras, and you have to do a short film in 2 days, and it was quite a nice experience. And at the beginning, the first meeting with the director said, here you have this situation, you do this and that. And the rule is never start your script. It is the story of a guy. That's the only rule. It's not the story of a guy. If it needs to be a guy, you have to really explain why. And within that showcase, we saw couples that were heterosexuals. We saw wonderful things because it wasn't the story about a guy. It was the result of many people that were working for the first time. And you, as an author, when you are starting a project, my brother-in-law used to be an author. You are working with the beginning with the film. Do you manage to sort of defend diversity, not only in terms of women, but in general terms? There are many script writing schools, someone doing somewhere. And I heard script writers saying it is the best definition. Everything was well until, of course, that today I try not only with my teams, but also when I want to tell a story. I want stories that have a dialogue with society, stories that are talking about really the rights of the different minorities and that have to do with equality and all that, because that's the ethos now. And even in terms of TV, that is quite commercial, they need a dialogue with society because the power is in the hands of the spectators because they can change a channel and whatever. So I myself, I try to have stories that will represent the moment that we're living. And I think that this is natural. But that's not your starting point. Your starting point is to tell a story, and this will intertwine with the rest. Today, you need to tell a story that will take into account the whole diversity and the minorities of the society as a whole, the questions and different struggles. Because who are you going to talk to? Who are you going to tell it to? Every filmmaker, every artist, anyone who works with creativity wants to tell, wants to show, wants to tell a good story. And even it is something that I mentioned to Marco Souza, to be able to survive. Any entity needs to talk about that, not about that, Rosanne. It's not the center of the plot, but you need that in order to be able to survive, because now we're living in a moment where you need to talk about diversity, about minorities, equality, parité. Parité is what we say in French. Equality. So let's talk about women. He used to say, no, this is not going to interest anyone. Of course it will. And we have had many people on the tables. And yes, of course it interests people. If you think differently, it's complicated to survive in the market if you don't believe that it is really going to add, it's really to, we're 51.4% in Brazil. It's a lot of people. I'm going to, it's the ping money, because some people decide to create this diversity actions in order to include more people, and there are people that it's their essence. And there is a market for everybody. When, for example, someone who is LGBT, what else? If you can see me, there are many different questions that are going to come up. Philosophy, tactics, biology, whatever. What I would say is I want really people to be interested in communicating with us, and that they can do it better every time. I suffer more violence than other people, and people think that it is normal. And I always think when I can speak and when I can speak of my work
para sonhar cinema,
because everybody knows how much it costs to say I'm a filmmaker. I pay in order to be able to dream. I mean, I'm also a teacher in a public school. I want really people to bring in a very up all these subjects, and that the violence over our bodies might be eliminated. I don't know how many of us die every year. I don't even want to mention numbers. I had these numbers. I did a documentary called Trans at Globo News at the time, in which we had one transsexual or transgender person per day in Brazil was assassinated. It is a terrible number. It is a number that I always mention when they ask me why I'm talking about the subject. Why do I think that it is important to talk about it? Because the numbers speak for themselves. Because in the end, they are people that die just because for being what they are, and that's terrible. I had another question. Yes, I just wanted to say one thing. At Globo News and mainly in journalism in Globo, I am directed by women. It is a company that really supports women. Most of the directors are women, and I've been directed by Afro-Brazilians, usually only men. Unfortunately, only men, not unfortunately, because they're very nice, but no, we don't. Afro-Brazilian women. And when I travel, it's weird. I feel a much more rejection abroad than in my company. And global. Is it like that in entertaining?
Está no mudo, Rosana.
Desculpa.
You're muted. Sorry. When I started directing the Cacete Planeta in Globo, there were very few women. There were some situations that weren't that nice, but that was 20 years ago. And today, I'm a script writer. We stay in our caves. I cannot, it works with my team. I cannot talk more. I try to get always people with different histories, exactly, in order to be able to, because in order to be able to write, you have to hear. In order to speak, you need people around you that may be able to tell you, to help you to tell the story with a different perspective. I cannot answer that. But in my cave, everything is fine. That's the only thing I can tell you. But I'm not naive. I think it's a long path, and for in a company to be able to say, oh yes, we we respect minorities, we have a good representation. Yes, if I write, I'm talking about what I've written. You just watch TV and you will see that there is still a lot to do. We asked ourselves with Marco Souza movie Imagine what we could do concretely in order to improve it for the segment of the female composers. And I even gave some ideas, but I would like to hear your ideas before that. Does anyone want to say something? Amanda, you're also muted. I wanted to ask whether Luisa wants to start. I am continuing to make propaganda. Luisa, give your solutions, please, for us. I think that these things, they have to do with models, role models. Rosane, who has been working for a longer time as a director, people that are seeing, because Mrs. Amanda saw in her research, when she researched IDTV, who was someone who was known, but at the very moment when the stories are told, she disappears. And this is a problem. Who will be uh, under the spotlight. So we have the films of those women, and I can dream to be a composer. I can also dream to be a composer because there are composers, female. Because I cannot dream about something that doesn't exist. No, they exist. So there's more visibility. At least, of course, there's a long way. There's a long way to go. Just because there are some female composers, there will be more. But let's not erase those that already exist. And this happens sometimes. And mainly when I'm thinking about the period that I study in the 60s, for example, there were always women making films and composing. It doesn't mean that they didn't exist, but who is under the spotlight? Who in the end will be important to actually help to influence the mentality? That's what we have to discuss. And this is something that has been done to a certain extent, but still can be improved. Okay. And then we have, I have that my internet is not working.
Tá tudo certo, mano.
Então tá bom. Eu diria que, por exemplo, no caso da Gui,
I'd say that in Giz's case, her legacy from the discussions I made and from my research, it happened. Her disappearance happened because very few people wrote about her. People did write about her, but that was not discussed at at other levels. So I'd say that the biggest solution is to really bring to the public realm in order to appreciate the work done by those women. When a woman makes a mistake, she's publicly disregarded. So they have to be in their group. So I'm going to use this analogy, talking about skating the Olympic Games.
Mulheres, aí você fala assim, porque ele tem uma manobra melhor, é isso.
Like, they're discussing their maneuvers and this and that. Skateboarding is a physical thing now. Soundtrack or music, it's a sound thing. So we have this habit that whatever men do is excellent, is great. Now what women do is just okay. So I think that's more of that. I think we have to keep celebrating every little step taken by a woman, working with art, working with, you see, I speak for myself. What I'd say for Musimagem, yeah, just bring workshops, just bring course programs. Create the new producers. Build this women's school. Create more opportunities. I speak for myself. I owe 100,000 reals just because I tried to make movies. I owe that money, and I don't own a house. So that is to give the opportunity to people who never had that opportunity. So the piece of advice I could provide to those who have more privilege is to set aside some time and choose people, pay for some course, talk to those people, share your experience. This is always going to be very inspiring to many women. When it comes to funding, this was discussed at Musimagem on women. For us composers, that's some equipment we have to have. I am like Hosanna. I'm in a cave, and I have to keep this cave equipped, and it costs a whole lot of money. And the very first steps are even more difficult because you do not have the work, you do not have the money, you do not have the equipment. So at Musimagem, we were considering sharing some of our equipment, and to leave it for women scholarship holders, because there were options to women composers, perhaps quotas for them to start, because financially speaking, it's very difficult to start. So this was discussed quite a lot, and I thought it was very nice to start from this side of it. Hazani, would you have any solution? Well, as to the visibility that Luisa mentioned, well, capacity building efforts, inclusive projects, and if you can actually hire, please hire and invite people and lend a hand. Those are the mechanisms to create support networks, including that visibility, capacity building contracts to have this kind of outlook. Well, I have it, or at least I try to have this outlook. In hiring and teaching classes, offering course programs. I think this is one very good mechanism. There's no simple solution. And obviously, we know what's going on. Amanda touched on that point of the dismantling of culture, the development mechanisms. Obviously, some public calls that had that in their perspective, and quotas and other efforts that try to bring more diversity to audiovisual. They have been very important. Many filmmakers across the country that came up, but it's really sad for us to see that this is like that. I'll try and look at it as a phase because filmmaking has been through many different phases, but this is indeed a very difficult phase. I graduated during the Collor administration during a very horrible phase, but one of the mechanisms are the development calls with that outlook on inclusion, quotas. Good. I also think that there's an important side to it. Everything you said, I totally agree. This is exactly what we talked about with Musimagem. You brought more details about it. But there's this element of liking it. When I started my career, I knew I was joining a crazy career because it's very difficult. But I was I had my eyes set on that, working hard. So the issue of diversity, female spirit, this is something that has happened very recently. 6, 7 years ago, I started to look to the sides and say, "Oh, I'm on my own." I would have meetings with Hugo Carvalho, Márcio Miranda, Tim Rescala at Globo, and there were some 30 men, all very nice men, but I was the only woman. The only other women were from the legal department or secretaries. So there was no other women. So I started to feel that it was really odd. After this surprise, I started to take an interest on that. And more than that, I started to like it. I discovered as I was working for this composer Ethel Smith, who was from the Stravinsky's time. He loved her. She was a British woman. She composed very high level orchestra pieces, and she was totally removed from the musical history by her English contemporaries. So she became feminist militant. We have more articles on her out on the streets than any presentation of her orchestra work, which is beautiful. I keep listening to women's music now more and more, and I tend to like it more and more. I see the world's soccer World Cup. I don't know whether you kept track of it. It was a couple of years ago, and it was a major event here in France. And there's a TF1, which is the local Global, which is a major TV channel. They decided to show all of the games played by the ladies. So that means a lot of money was put into the event, and it was a major success. The TF1 made a lot of money. The publicity time just grew. It was booming, and that was all filled up with women watching women play soccer, and they were rooting and they were drinking beer, and we were beginning to like our company, start to like the stuff we do, to start to like our art. And that's very important because we are 51% in Brazil, and probably the same thing in France. So this can be a very important lever for us. We are creating this starvation for it. I really starve uh, trying to listen to female singers or female instrument players. Yeah, I think it has to do with this concept of feminism, to start to realize that we're not enemies, and we have to really appreciate the work done by women. Obviously, there are those who are our enemies, are both men and women. Obviously, we're only human, but I think it's beautiful. One goes up, and then she helps the other up. So the best movement is to be able to build a new future, a new reality, because it's more stories of people who have followed similar tracks, similar avenues. So look, this is incredible. I've done it. Come this way. So it's beautiful to see this kind of appreciation. It's stuff that I didn't notice. I didn't notice that in my family because my two grandmothers were the ones who ruled the family, so it was a matriarchal family rather than a patriarchal family. But I do expect that more women feel inspired by the work that women do. So we should be, really promoting that. And in my project, I have this movie club. The idea and the platform is to map women's work. And with the film that we have mapped already, we go to the movie clubs to talk about it. Another tip I'd share with you is that more movie clubs should be scattered all over and should exhibit work done by women, to have curatorship, that you will be a curator to say, look, this is a list, put it up in your movie club. This effort is what's going to maintain movies, and everybody who can have that hope, because I started 10 years ago. I started college 10 years ago, and then I did my master's program. Not really 10 years, so it was actually 2013. So I joined this kind of a bankrupt business, but I'm still very, very hopeful that we will be able to promote one another and support one another. Even if they burn all of our movie clubs, we will remember those films and speak about them. We'll never allow them to die out. Very nice. Marcos, do we have more questions coming over the internet? Okay, so it's all very clear. So would anybody like to add anything? I'd like to express my gratitude for the invitation and say goodbye. I think it's about time from what we said. And to repeat, as I said in the beginning, of course, we do not fit in this panel, but it was very good to have this panel, this meeting. So I'd like to thank Marion for her mediation and my panel workers, Luisa and Amanda. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rosania, for your great attendance here, participation. Amanda and Luisa, would you like to say something? Yeah, I would like to express my gratitude for the invitation, but it's really very very uncommon to have somebody from the academy to be invited to these events. It's really this. There's a lot of separation between practice and the academy. I think this could be a smaller gap actually, all the way to get to, other events have been made before, and Musimagem is trying to do the same thing too, so that we can talk a lot more. I think it's always very productive. And to look at the academy, at least in sound and music and the movies, it's got the other side of things. Though there's actually a lot of parity, I would say. Great. So I'd like to really express my gratitude for meeting you, for being able to speak up, to be able to speak about my job, my work, and my research, and to be able to bring this woman whom I met in the academy, and I am really a fan, Luisa, to be able to see you who are out there in the market acting and making a difference in the everyday life of everybody, to speak about hope, to speak about dreams, to speak about surpassing, because we are living right now. So I'd really like to thank you, Marcos, Zeneto. I don't know who actually invited me originally, who saw my work, but please be assured that I'm very happy for these moments, and this is what gives me the strength to continue resisting and to try to inspire other women. So really, thank you very much. I hope to be able to talk to you more often. Please. It will be a pleasure. Thank you, Amanda, once again. It's it's very generous of you to dedicate this time to our visibility, to the visibility of women artists. So we really have to thank you. The event is going to continue. The festival will include other panels and speeches, and there's going to be a concert by the orchestra. They will be playing one of my songs, in addition to many other very good ones. But there will be one woman in the repertoire. So I highly recommend this orchestra. They are fantastic, and you can watch the other parts of the event because it's the only event on music for image from the Americas. Even in North America, we do not have any peer. So thank you, Marco Souza, and thank you all. So what we do now, Antonio?
Eu acho que a gente se despede.
I think we just bid farewell. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Obrigado, meninas. Obrigada, Rosana.
Obrigada. Tchau, tchau, gente.
Obrigada aí, pessoal.
Já acabou, já acabou.
É,
It's over.
obrigada aí,
Valeu.
Não, quero também dizer que